I'm working in the New Perspectives Microsoft Access 2010 textbook. I'm in Tutorial 1. I'm picking up on page AC28 and we're going to create a simple query. We're going to create it using the Simple Query Wizard. As you move along in Access and become more familiar with queries, you'll probably stop using the Query Wizard and create the queries manually. However, right now I want to show you how to use this because once you see the wizard interface in Access, it's going to look very similar in other objects that you create. So the Simple Query Wizard will look very similar to the Form Wizard, will look very similar to the Report Wizard. In your textbook, they have you leave the table open. Now they're having you leave the table open because the next object that you create will be created on whatever the current object is, whatever object has focus. However, there are going to be some situations where you're not going to be able to do what you need to do when you have an object open. So I suggest that you get in the habit of closing the objects when you're done with them. Then, if I want to create a query based on the contract table, I will select the contract table in the navigation bar, then go to Create, and then activate my Simple Query Wizard. So I've gone to the Create ribbon. In the Queries group, clicked Query Wizard, opens up the New Query dialog box. Simple Query Wizard is selected. I'll click OK. And here, the table that I selected is showing up in the Tables Queries drop-down box. If I had another object in this database that I could use as the record source for this particular object, I could change to it using this drop-down arrow. I only have one object at this time. To bring the fields in, I have a number of options. I can click them in one at a time by using the greater than sign. I can put them back one at a time. I can double click them in one at a time. I can double click them back one at a time. I can put them all in. I can put them all back. You need to know how to use all of these tools because what you're creating and how you're going to create it will dictate which tool you use. Now in this situation I want contract num, contract amount, and contract type. Now it's probably easier to take them one at a time. I want contract num, contract amount, and contract type. Another option might have been to put them all in and put back the two that I don't need. So think about these things. These options are available to you. You don't have to follow exactly the directions in the book, but understand what it is you're trying to accomplish and which method of bringing in the fields will best suit your purpose. So I have contract num, contract amount, contract type. I'm going to click Next. If I found that I made an error or thought that I made an error, I could go back and check it, but you can see at this point I can't go back any further. Next. Detail is going to show every record. Summary is going to create an aggregate. It's going to summarize my records. Right now we're going to leave it at the default. I'll click Next. It's going to give us an option to name the query. Now keep in mind that the standard for naming objects is no spaces. No spaces, and you'll hear me tell you not to use any numerical characters. A numerical character would be something like a hyphen, which is a minus sign, a slash, which is a divide by. So I'm going to tell you not to use those. You will see that they are used in the book, and if you follow the instructions in the book, you're going to be okay with me right now, but it's not really a good idea to use numerical symbols in a field or object name. We're going to call this contract list. And remember, no spaces, contract, no space, list. In order to see the two words, we capitalize the first letter of each word. And if you're in my class, please do not add your name, do not add the tutorial number or anything else. Contract list. Databases are very fussy. What we're trying to learn here is how to use a database, not how to name objects so it's easy for your instructor to find what you've created. You need to name it according to the standards. And the standard is no spaces. If I'm using the no space standard, then my first letter in each word is capitalized. There are other methods where you can use underscores, but we are using no space, capitalize the first letter of each word. I'll click Finish. My query will open, and if I need to resize the fields so that I can see them better, I can double click on the column divider. Now keep in mind that when you resize a column in Access, it will resize to the current view. So sometimes you can, oftentimes what I do is I resize a few fields. I'll take these. Now my last field, you notice, is not resized properly. So then I will move over and resize that field. Sometimes what happens, see, my scroll bar has gone away. Now I'm in trouble because I can't get over there. I could manually resize it, and I still have no scroll bar. So what I end up doing here is resizing one of the first columns, resize this, then come back, resize, or collapse my navigation pane. But you will run into some issues where the last column will not resize, or the last few columns will not resize properly, and your scroll bar disappears. You can't get over there to resize them. And so then in those situations, what you'll need to do is resize one of the first columns small enough that you have room to get over, resize, and then resize at the beginning again. It's just a quirk, and Access is actually full of quirks. The application works pretty well. The application actually works very well, but there are some quirks. You just have to get used to them and work with them. So now we've created our query. And whenever you make any design changes to an object, be sure to save.